have any training in acting?
No, I got no training in none. Actually, when I became a journalist, I was a cook in a restaurant and used to freelance stories in Denver. I was a high school dropout, like Albert. And I always wanted to be a writer. And one day I woke up in Denver, and I ran away from home when I was 17, quit high school. One day I woke up in Denver when I was 21, and I thought, oh my God, I haven't written so much as a letter to Santa. And yet I was going to be a writer, and here I am cooking in a restaurant. And so I immediately started freelancing story, because obviously you just can't turn around and write a book and get it published overnight. So I figured I'm just going to write and get stuff out there, and the newspapers turned out to need freelance work, and so I did freelance newspapering. And it was kind of the same with doing Chautauqua. I eventually got a bachelor's degree in journalism after I was already working in the business, but in 1997, I wrote a book, actually it came out that year, on the Donner Party, called the Donner Party Chronicles. It's a history. And a friend of mine was in charge of Chautauqua, Raleigh Melton. He was on the board of the Matter Humanities Committee, and I had gone to Chautauqua as an audience member for years, since it started, as a matter of fact. And I never imagined myself up on the stage. That's not what I do. I write, and that's it. I don't perform. But Raleigh said, hey, you gotta go and do a character related to the Donner Party. It'll help sell your book if you do a character in Chautauqua related to the Donner Party. And I said, come on, who's gonna look at me and think I starved on a mountaintop for 4 months? That's not gonna work. But what happened was, he said, well, you don't have to be, one of the stranded immigrants. You could be one of the rescuers or whatever. And so I performed as George McKinstry, who was one of the rescuers. And I liked it. After all those years watching it on stage in San Rafael Park here in town, I was actually on the stage and I loved it. And then the following year they said, hey, we'd like you to come back. The theme is the 1920s. We already got writers and politicians. Why don't you do an athlete? And I said, oh, come on, man. I don't look like an athlete. I mean, when was there ever a fat athlete in the 1920s? So George Herman Ruth, of course, was my next character, and then Henry VIII, and it went on from there. And it's a lot of fun, and it's telling stories, which is what I do anyway. I did it when I was a cook and a truck driver. And when I cut down trees, I told stories. I had to. I didn't have a choice.
How long was the prep?
For each character, the prep is a year.
Wow.
You do, and I haven't done Einstein for 9 years. I think it was 2001. I did Einstein for the local Chautauqua. It was the year after I did Henry VIII. And that was the greatest generation, I guess. World War II was the theme of that one. And so I did Einstein for that one, but I've done a new character every year for the last 10 years or so. And it takes about a year. My last character this year was John Fremont, the explorer. And the way I do it is I just get every book I can get my hands on, biographies or their memoirs or whatever. And I put them next to my bed, and every night for a couple hours before I go to sleep, I read something of that character for a solid year. If there are videotapes, there are videos, actually newsreels of Einstein. So I've got them at home. I've got newsreels from the 1920s where he says, it followed from the special theory of relativity that matter and energy were two manifestations of the same thing. So I watched those over and over to kind of get that inflection.
So that's
he was much harder to understand than when I tried to do a German accent, by the way. His accent was much thicker, but you don't want to ball up people's understanding of what you're saying. But so yeah, it takes a year, and for some people, like on Merle, I did a few years ago, and Merle's always been a hero of mine. And I got all the kinescopes actually on DVD now, of his See It Now program and his other programs from CBS. And I've got audio recordings of his broadcast from the rooftop in London during the Blitz. And so that was also part of it. I'd listen to it. And in the case of Einstein, or any character, I try to get the accoutrements of that character You know, in other words, when I did Fremont, I learned to use a sextant, and I got a brass sextant from the 1800s. And I tried to use the nuts and bolts of the kinds of things and learn how to use them. With Einstein, I'm doing him in Colorado next month, in Greeley, Colorado. And I have to do a kids program in the daytime as Einstein. And so as part of that, thanks. As part of that, I'm doing the kids program, and for the last year, I've been collecting physics toys. Like expanding universes. And stuff like that, like anti-gravity toys, and a little Van de Graaff generator, and a plasma ball. Speaking of Tesla, who was you were asking about Tesla, I've got a little a Tesla coil. And so I've collected all this stuff and learned more about physics through using these toys, and then as Einstein, I'll be able to teach the kids. So it's fun for me. I mean, I like to learn as is. Like Einstein, I do not like memorizing declensions of French verbs, but I do like to learn. So.
How about the dialect? You're teaching yourself the dialect? You don't have a dialect tape or
No.
Just
For
yourself?
Einstein, it was watching his newsreels and trying to get the cadence at least and the accent on certain words that he was doing. For Fremont, I did a southern accent because Fremont was born in Georgia, and he grew up in South Carolina. For Huey Long, we have Huey Long on YouTube, and I try to do a kind of Louisiana accent for Huey. And for Henry, I just, how many times have you seen, movies with Henry in them? I've seen all those movies, and I try to do a synthesis of Henry, 8th of that name by the grace of God, King of England and France, defender of the faith, primate of the Church of England. Aye, you know that. But you fancy you know more. I try to do the various accents. But I just, when I was a kid, I was a kid that mimicked the gym teacher. When the gym teacher was out of the room, I turned into the gym teacher, and then he walked in, and then I had to do push-ups. But
So there's a parallel.
yeah, so that was the full extent of my acting experience was class clown experience. Yes.
Of the 10 characters you've played over the last 10 years, which was your favorite and why?
Henry. Even though his costume is 40 pounds, and if I was wearing Henry's costume in this room, I'd be dead. I'd be in heat stroke at the very least. But I like Henry VIII because he is bipolar in the same sentence. He's hail fellow, well met, and he sort of deteriorates, and by the end of the sentence, he's ordering an execution. And he just goes into these tirades, treason, traitors, this I will not brook, I will not brook! And he just sort of totally dissolves, and gets super mad, and then 3 seconds later he's, well, a nice guy again, and being real charming, and something sets him off. So I love doing Henry because he's so volatile. And you could just go up, I mean, you can't eat the scenery as Henry because that's what Henry does. I mean, it's just part of him, he chews up the whole stage and he's there. And so I like that. Whereas Einstein, I have to keep reminding myself, not only of the accent, but also trying to play Einstein in here. I'm a lot bigger guy than he was. And I'm trying to play Einstein in here. I like doing big characters. I like doing Henry, and I like doing Huey Long and Babe Ruth. And for the other characters I do that are a little bit more introverted, I have to keep kicking myself to say, no, you're 75 years old. You can't be jumping around like that. Yes?
How has portraying these characters, particularly Einstein, how has it changed your perception of him now?
Einstein, my perception of Einstein now, I think like everybody else, always thought of Einstein as the kindly grandfather figure who was very, very smart and very lovable and that kind of thing. And I didn't really know about the fact that he had left his first wife and married his first cousin as his second wife. He abandoned a child, Lucero, who was the first child he had with Neliva before they were married, because he didn't want to take the scandal of it. And he was in his in his 20s at the time, but he abandoned a child at that time, and it doesn't seem like something Einstein, Mr. Caring would do. So it's made him more human. Knowing these other things about him has made him more human to me than some icon who doesn't change. He was, had all the foibles everybody else has. And I think that's the same with all the characters I do. I learn more about them, and just walking for a few minutes in their shoes, you learn a lot more about that person than you ever would by reading a biography or watching a movie or a documentary.